Okay, it's 7 o'clock and we do have 4 of us, so I think we should just get started. I'm sure a few others will join. Everybody can hear me, by the way, right? All right, you're all super silent, so I want to make sure I can hear you. Well, let me just first introduce the meeting. It is Monday, March 13th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee, and we're being audio and video recorded. The start of the meeting, in addition to myself, we have Councillor Noel from Ward 6, Councillor Humphrey from Ward 5, Councillor Gentile from Ward 4, and Councillor Califf, Vice Chair of the Committee from Ward 8. Our first item tonight is 81-23, acceptance of $11,939 from the National Environmental Health Association. And we have Ms. Walsh here from Health and Human Services. If you could please start us off.
Hi, yes, good evening. This is to accept money that is from the National Environmental Health Association. It helps our staff, particularly our environmental health staff, perform inspections in retail food establishments and other food establishments to conform to the standards. It's a voluntary program, but we've been taking part in this for many years now, so we make sure that we have a standard approach to all inspections decreasing foodborne illness. So this money helps pay for a software program that we use called WinWam. It helps for training, and then because we're part of this program, we have to be audited. So we get audits, we get feedback, and it just keeps our inspectors on their toes, following a standard protocol. And we would like you to let us accept the money, and we can continue with our good work.
Okay, thank you very much for introducing it. I just want to note we've also been joined by Councillor Norton from Ward 2 and Councillor Oliver from Ward 1. Do we have comments or questions for Ms. Walsh about this program? And we're also being joined right now by Councillor Maliki from Ward 3.
I'll move acceptance, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Councillor Gentile. Do we have any other discussion, comments, or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That has been approved. I think we're 7-0 at this point. Let's see. 1, 2. No, I think we have all of us actually. So I think that's 8-0. Thank you very much. That's all you have before us tonight, Ms. Walsh, right?
Yes, thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a nice night. Okay, let's go on to 82-23, acceptance of $100,000 from the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. And we have Mr. Ferguson joining us to introduce this item. Welcome, Mr. Ferguson. Please go ahead and tell us about this.
Yeah, thank you. This is a grant that we've gotten from the through the Green Communities Program of the State Department of Energy, and it's a grant for continuation of our LED lighting work that we've been doing at South High School for several years. We are almost complete as far as our conversion of the entire school to LED lighting. So this grant in part helps us complete that project. And there's also a component to this grant for decarbonization of Fire Station 1. These are competitive grants, and one of the things that they give you extra consideration for nowadays is decarbonization efforts. So so we included this program for Fire Station 1, where we're going to convert the living quarters to heat pumps, cold weather heat pumps, so that they can heat and cool the entire second floor living quarters of Fire Station 1. It's a phased decarbonization effort, so other uses for this grant include some air sealing and weather stripping at Fire Station 1, installation of thermostats and control valves as part of the decarbonization program at Fire Station 1. So we've been awarded $100,000, so we're asking you to accept that grant so we can go ahead and do this work at South High School and Fire Station 1 this coming spring and summer.
Thank you very much. Let me ask if we have comments or questions from the committee. So I have one question. The insulation at Fire Station 1, what type of insulation when you're doing these kinds of projects do you like to use?
I think in this case, it's probably a foam insulation because it's an air sealing project. So it's more to fill in like air gaps between the wall and the roof space. In some cases, we would use fiberglass insulation, but not in this particular case. This would be
So
a foam.
That's like a spray foam on the ceiling, essentially?
It would actually be in some of the joint areas between the roof and the top of the wall.
Okay. Councillor Gentile, you have your hand up.
So, Mr. Ferguson, or Bill, as I have known you for a few years, I'm just curious, do you know how the decision was made to do the work at Fire Station 1? And the reason that I ask is that over the years, I have received emails commenting or criticizing on the heat and AC at Fire Station number 2. It's been kind of a constant, every so many months, you know, I'd get an email. And so I would have thought maybe that would be the station where the improvements would have been made. So do you know why it's 1 and say not 2, or any other station for that matter?
Well, I think there has been concerns about comfort conditions at Fire Station 1 as well with the air conditioning and heating system. So probably a similar situation as Fire Station 2 by the sounds of it. And this is a way to address that concern and get a grant for doing it. I'm not exactly sure what's being planned for Fire Station 2 at this stage, but Maureen, you look like you might know.
Maureen, Ms. Lemieux, if you wanted to comment.
If I may, Madam Chair, Councilor Gentile, I was just trying to look up to see, the mayor has set aside, I believe it's $500,000 for both Fire Stations 1 and 2 for different heating, ventilation, different improvements at those 2 stations. I was actually trying to look it up as you were asking your question. One of the things I know that we're doing at Station 2 are the windows, and I don't know if on the website, if we've listed, if we're doing heat pumps or other work like that over at Station 2, but we're certainly focused on Station 2 as well.
All right, just one request. Certainly want to, accept the money. Could you ask that between now and next week that somebody just ask the chief or make the chief aware that, I asked the question about the condition of 2 in addition to 1, and see if he might be able to shed a little light on what's being done. Because as they say, it's been a while that I've been getting the complaints, and I'm sure that would be good news about the windows, and it would be nice to know if in fact there is going to be heating and air conditioning and insulation work done, or at least it's planned for 2. So if somebody could ask the chief to weigh in, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can get in touch with the chief. I'd be glad to do that. And also touch base with Josh, because I think he does have some plans for Fire Station 2, even though this grant is focused on Fire Station 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to put item 8323 before us concurrently, because as is evident from the materials in our packet, accepting this goes hand in hand with appropriating the $33,289 from the Energy Stabilization Fund that is requested in the next docket item. So we should probably discuss them together and vote them together. Does anybody have any questions about that piece of it? Or Mr. Ferguson, do you want to say another word about that piece of it?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add that, like I said, these are competitive grants. We've gotten grants 8 years in a row through this program. So we tried to make sure that we prepare a grant application that is going to be successful through the review process. And one of the things that they're putting more emphasis on is that the city or town provide some kind of a matching funds for these projects. So we've drawn from, or we'd like to draw from the stabilization fund to provide that matching fund, and actually it stretches the funds, but it also the grant and the stabilization fund, through these projects, we also leverage $48,000 in utility rebates. So that's another benefit that comes through the grant and through the city stabilization fund match.
So, Mr. Ferguson, I know it within this past year, so we've had a couple of different requests and items that involve the Energy Stabilization Fund. Can you tell us how much remains in that fund currently?
I would say it's approximately about over 250,000. I didn't check before this meeting, but I think it's approximately 250,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Ms. Lemieux or Mr. Curley, are either of you able to tell us the current balance previous to approval of this docket item?
I just looked it up. I see just over 201,000 before this item.
Okay, and my recollection the last time we talked about it, and I know we've made a couple appropriations from it, was a little bit north of that. So that makes sense that that's where we're at currently.
There was 344 to start the year. We moved out 2 items totaling 165. And then we took in, I already X'd that out, but the difference in that in revenue, I think it was like 22 grand to get us to the 201.
Can you remind us what the recent 2 items were?
1 second.
I believe one was a study in specs for Pierce School.
Yes, Pierce HVAC, 65,000, library HVAC, 100,000.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other comments or questions on either of these 2 items? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion on one or both of these items?
So moved on both.
Okay, Councillor Kalis has moved approval of both items. Why don't we take up each, we'll vote on each one separately. So first 82-23, which is the acceptance of $100,000. Any comments or questions additional before we vote? Councillor Noel, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
did. I should have said it during the discussion. Again, hats off to Mr. Ferguson and the department for applying for these competitive grants. You know, it puts a boost in our capacity to be able to do these projects. And I'm very appreciative of the departments for taking the initiative to apply. So I'm happy to vote in favor of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that 82-23 is unanimously approved. Now 83-23, which is the appropriation of the $33,289 from the Energy Stabilization Fund. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is also unanimously approved. That's all for you tonight, Mr. Ferguson, right?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much. Thank you for your work and thank you for attending tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to 87-23, authorization for the MWRA grant and loan program. I know I saw Ms. Sullivan. I don't know if I saw Mr. McGonigal. Ms. Sullivan, are you presenting tonight?
I will be presenting tonight. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So this is a request to accept an MWRA grant loan of a total of $4,340,000. 75% of that, which is $3,255,000, is a grant. And the remaining $1,085,000 is a zero interest loan, which is payable over 10 years in 10 installments annually, I believe. We will use this grant loan to fund Area 9 for I&I projects, which is in the area of Oak Hill Park and Wells Ave and Hampton Street. The project consists of main replacements, spot repairs, and cleaning and lining of the mains in those areas. Happy to take any questions.
Obviously, this is an item we are accustomed to. How many years running have we been here for this particular item?
I think the first one was in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So annually since then for both water and sewer. So
Counselor, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Sullivan, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
this is phase 14 of the MWRA's program.
Counselor Norton.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan, any insights as to the status in this area, how good or bad, average it is?
So this area tends to have a higher groundwater table. So we expect that we'll be doing more main replacements. And it is an older area of the city, I believe. So yeah, there'll be a lot of repair. It's a large project.
And I don't remember how bad it used to be, but do you remember what the percentage is of our loss now? I know we had a goal now, and totally
Sorry.
did not prepare you
will
for this,
find that
but as
out
we're
for you.
discussing it, I was kind of wondering what our status was on that. No big deal either way.
Are you looking for the percentage reduction of I&I?
Yeah, and what our loss rate or whatever that terminology is for how much water is lost. I know there's the extra water, clean water that we're paying for and not getting, and the extra sewage that we're paying to clean water. I see Maureen has her hand up. She, as usual, probably has all of this in like fractions.
Probably does.
Yeah.
Ms. Lemieux, why don't you answer first and then I'll.
Thank you, if
we'll
I
come
may,
back to
Madam
Councilor
Chair.
Sure.
And I am doing this from memory, so I could be off by a couple of percentage points. But when I first started with the city back in 2010, I believe that it was between 63 or 65% more water that we were sending back to MWRA than we purchased. Now I think we are in the low 40s. I don't know if we've broken 30 something yet, but it's well over 20% improvement that we've made. We had been really benefiting as compared to all of the other MWRA communities with our sewer rates. But I will tell you, Boston has really been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years, and they are starting to really reap the benefits of reducing their infiltration. It's mostly infiltration. And so now this year we did not fare as well in relation to everybody else with the new sewer assessments that we will have for fiscal 24, but we've taken well over 20% out.
Right. Thank you. Almost as impressive as that time that you were able to pull out of your head the average turning radius of our fire trucks. That one, I'm never going to forget that one, but just up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Kalis.
On this one, is this Ward 8 that we're talking about?
It is.
I thought so. Okay. I moved this.
Anything further, Counselor Kalis, or
That's
you're,
it.
that's it? Okay. Ms. Sullivan, just a quick overview question. I was looking at the maps and sort of where we're at. So after this, we have Project 11 and that's it?
No, this will never end. We'll always be doing repairs. It may not be as drastic, but Area 11 is the last actual project area, but we will continue to need to do maintenance on our sewer system.
So, but after we get through 11, will we essentially need to kind of reformulate the plan of how to attack maintenance and in what areas and approach?
Well, yeah, we will have to come up with a different plan.
And in terms of the previous few project areas, are those, what is still outstanding or ongoing?
So project 7 is in post-assessment. Project 8 is in construction. Project 9 currently is in design.
Okay, so I'm just looking really quickly at the map. Do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve from Counselor Kalis. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have unanimous approval of that item.
Thank you.
Is that all, Ms. Sullivan? For some reason, I thought you had another
That's all I
item.
have
That's it,
tonight.
right? Okay,
Yes,
thank you very
all.
much. We appreciate it.
night.
Have a good evening. Okay, I know we've moved a little more quickly perhaps than may have been anticipated, and that, oh, Ms. Friedman, you're here. I knew you were, I know we were running a little earlier than you might have been available. You're okay to
That's
take up
okay.
these couple items now?
I sure am, yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. So we've got a couple items for you. The first one, are you doing the electric vehicle incentive program? I have Mr. Heath down for that. but
I'll do
are
that
you
one as
able to
well.
Speak to that. Okay, so let's start
Yeah.
with that. That's 84-23, acceptance of $69,878.60 from Mass DEP's electrical vehicle incentive program. Thank you very much again. If you could introduce this.
Sure, yes. So the Mass EVIT program is to install electric vehicle chargers. And the 3 locations we have are Pleasant Street, which we are looking at, the Pleasant Street parking lot, which we're looking at installing 2 chargers, the Pearl Street lot, which would be 1 charger, and Washington Elm on the northeast side, which we would be installing 2 chargers there. The work for Pleasant and Pearl for the underground work was done by Make Ready. And the primary underground work for Washington Elm was done and built into our village enhancement project. So the cost, what this grant covers is the remaining installation costs and then the charger itself.
I've got a couple of hands up, so let me start with those. Counselor Maliki, then Counselor Noel.
Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of confused by the northeast corner of Washington and Elm. Which spots exactly are you talking about? It sounds like they are not the spots where on the southwest corner adjacent to the MBTA lot where the previous signs were up.
It's actually exactly where those previous signs were. So the one thing we would need to make this happen is traffic council approval, and I'm not sure we'll get it. I think so when the Washington Elm, when the village enhancement project was completed, as part of the process, we had planned on the first 4 spaces to be electric vehicles. These are the spaces across from Blue Ribbon.
But that's the southwest corner.
Oh,
Not
I
the
call it,
northeast.
I'm staying on the same side of the bridge, but across from Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges is when we did the project, we added 16 spaces in that area. There have been discussions with counselors to take out those EV signs and convert it to metered parking spots. So, my recommendation is we accept the grant, but we can only install those chargers if we get traffic council approval, which would require council approval. And that will require some public process.
Yeah, so we had emails between us and Andrea Kelly and Pam Wright and I and Nicole. So Councilor Kelly's concern was the impact on businesses that have a lot of sort of quick in and out takeout business, tying up the spots. I actually got a chance to talk to Judith at Judith's Kitchen and a couple of people who worked at Blue Ribbon, and it was kind of like mixed feelings whether it would make a difference or not. So I'll be abstaining tonight anyway. But I just wanted to clarify. So the 2 chargers represents 4 parking spaces because each charger goes to 2 spaces. Is that?
Yeah. And one thing we can do, so first off, a vote tonight is a vote to accept the grant. It's not to approve the usage of those parking spots. So I just want to be clear about that. We would still need that separately. If we do chargers, the 2 chargers, we can actually bag one of the chargers until there's more demand. So that would mean 2 of the 4 spaces are EV, and then the other 2 that would be at the bagged charger could be unmetered parking spots or time limited or pickup drop off, however traffic council would want to use those spaces. What we wouldn't be able to do if we bag a meter is actually have a physical meter in both of those spaces, because it's actually the placement of the charger is where the meter would go. So we can't actually put in a physical meter.
So does that mean that those parking spaces or any parking spaces that get these chargers are forever, the parking is free?
No, how it is, so we have a vendor, Green Spot, that is currently on contract for 3 years to manage our EV charging. They are charging. What they do is they charge for the time when the plug is in the vehicle, and they charge that at one rate. And then when the car is fully charged, they're charging a significantly higher rate because they too want a higher turnover for these parking spots. So they can put a time limit on them, and they can also use pricing to encourage higher turnover. But in general, I think they like to have 2+ hours of charging, as opposed to, if you're going to have a EV charger, you really don't want 1 hour at that charger.
So they basically, in a kind of steady future state, being used as intended, people would be parking for 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah, probably. I don't think you're not going to see anyone parking there all day, because we're not going to allow that.
Right.
We can say, what we currently have is where we have chargers in the public parking lots. We can often have a time limit consistent with what's in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm. And do you have to be charging to park in those spaces? You can't just say, I have an electric vehicle, I don't need to charge, but I like the parking space, and just park there and not charge?
They would not want to, because the rate would be so high. So you do have to be an EV. They are signed as EV charging only. Theoretically, if someone puts in, if they plug it into their car, we wouldn't know, but the system would automatically be charging them a much higher rate of $3 or $4 or $5 an hour.
I'm saying if you don't even plug in the thing at all, you just park there, you don't touch the EV charger.
Yeah, that would not be considered legal parking.
So our parking enforcement officers would give them a ticket for not utilizing the charger? Is that the?
Yeah, that's how we had worked with them on it.
Okay. All right, and I'll let Councilor Noel go ahead. I think I had another question, but I'll think of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Malky. Councilor Noel.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about these chargers. Just a couple of questions. It looks like the Pleasant Street ones are installed, or are there going to be additional ones?
Yeah, it's interesting. We are actually going to swap out the chargers to a different charger to take advantage of the grant. So we'll end up pulling those chargers. The company that put those in essentially loaned us those chargers. until the grant came through, but they're very clear. They have to actually purchase new chargers and put them in. And it
So-
was worth it.
Okay, so it's not a lost expense with the new.
No,
charger.
the public won't know the difference. You know,
Okay,
it's gonna be,
so it's funny. One of the things I was going to ask about those chargers is they're not a traditional charging unit, like it's not EVgo on the EVgo system. How do you determine? So when I parked on Pleasant Street, I had to download a new app and set up a new system because it wasn't a system that's, there's a couple that are very popular and that are transferable to each other. One is EVgo. What's going to be the new charger, and how do you determine to make sure that it's going to be something that's, easily accessible? Because I assume,
Yeah.
I could be wrong about this, but it'd be nice if everybody was working together.
yeah, it sure would. So, in Newton, we have ChargePoint for,
Right.
essentially the city fleet.
Right.
And that ChargePoint does about 90% of the chargers in the country, I think, still. We use a different vendor, GreenSpot.
That's what it was.
Which
Great spot.
is using something called BTC units, but they white label the software as GreenSpot. And part is, it is a way for us to add chargers at no cost to the city. So even though we have these EVIP grants sometimes,
Mhm.
there's still additional costs that are borne by GreenSpot that we do not pay. It's a $0 contract. And they're also responsible for the maintenance on these for us. So they have a, equipment and maintenance $0 contract.
So going forward, though, are we chasing the cost, or are we going to try to uniform the chargers in the city?
Right now, we're looking at keeping the city fleet ones as ChargePoint and GreenSpot for the public parking spots. Or sorry, and GreenSpot for the public parking lots.
You don't think that is inconvenient or inconsistent?
Well, at one point, a few years ago, we did talk actually about, should we switch them out all to ChargePoint? And we were looking at the cost, and it was at a point when the city was having to make some difficult financial decisions. And I said, I'm not going to recommend that the city voluntarily replace good chargers, spend money where we have free chargers, spend money to purchase other chargers for the sake of consistency when we were making very tough financial decisions. It
Okay.
seemed like the wrong time.
All right. So remind me again, but we still, despite that, we're going to change out what's happening at Pleasant Street.
It'll be the exact same charger with a different serial number.
So it's the same company. Just a
Same
different-
company, different serial number.
Okay, and so one other thing to clarify for Counselor Maliki, when I charge there, the signage is very clear that you cannot stay there longer than 3 hours. So
Yeah.
you can only charge for 3 hours and you can't stay there longer than 3 hours. It doesn't answer your question about, are they gonna mark cars that aren't charging? But when I've parked there, I've made sure I don't exceed 3 hours, so.
And,
Thank you.
and what's great is you can try to game the system and not get a ticket, but you certainly will be getting very high fees that are automatically paid on your credit card.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Counselor Norton.
Thank you. And Nicole, great to see you back. I was not sure you were
Thank you.
still with us, so nice to see that you are. So I was glad to hear that they're going to be in charge of maintenance. I've never heard of this company. Is it, do you have any sense of their track record, or, because that is a big problem with chargers, is that sometimes you
Yeah.
get to them and they're not working.
We've worked with them for the last 3 years. So we had a contract with them since 2018 or 19. The chargers that we've had have been in Lexington lot and Richardson lot. And I think at Adams Street lot as well.
Oh, okay,
Um,
people are happy
and
with
they're-
them.
The bigger they get, the better they will be, because right now they use, contractors for the maintenance, but it's fairly automated, and my dream is they have enough business here. So then they have, an in-house staff person stationed in Boston.
Okay, but we had any complaints about someone getting there and they're not working?
They've fixed them when they have issues, just like anyone else does. So it seems to be working.
Okay, well, no, not everyone else does. The ones it wasn't them, it was ChargePoint on Cambridge Street in Boston were broken for like 2 years. So that's why I ask. Whereas
Yeah, no, they're
my
better
partner
than
has
that.
a Teslas work all the time,
Yeah.
everywhere. So
Right.
So it's a real limitation if we're trying to get people to switch over to these things. If you get to one once and it's not working, you're kind of like done with them.
I find them responsive, and they have a new GM that's really fantastic.
Okay, because
We
the
can call
value
we call the
is
GM
not even
anytime.
so much like if you live in Newton and you have a driveway, you probably don't need this. But if you
Exactly.
live in Newton and you're a renter, or you work in Newton and need to be able to charge, this is, this would allow you to have an EV at all. Or if you are
Right.
traveling and you need to stop on your way, to wherever you're going, and you need, so you need it to be working. So I think it's great that we're doing this. I would just wanted to, they need to work.
Agree.
Thanks.
Thanks. Counselor Maliki.
Thank you. I thought of my question. Does the city share in any way in the revenue stream from the electric charging fees? Because if it were a parking metered space, we'd be getting the parking meter revenue indefinitely.
So in the bid process, they did bid, and there is a revenue share after a certain point, past break even.
After they break even their installation cost, basically?
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of how much it will be and when it starts?
I can look it up. I don't know offhand. I apologize for that.
You can just email us later. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I just have a couple clarifying questions I wanted to make sure I understand. So if traffic council doesn't approve some of the spots that you have in mind, and it sounds like a few of them are already up and running, so those won't be issues, but the newer ones, what will happen? What's the next step? Are there other locations we can put these things and still put this money to work?
No, the money would not be transferable to any other location.
Just because of the nature of the grant, or
Correct. Yeah.
because we don't have a place for
They-
them?
The grant was for the Washington and Elm spaces. And look, the thing is, the underground work that's not part of this grant is incredibly expensive. So when Eversource does underground work on a site, it can take, start to finish, it's no less than 18 months with them. And the costs are never less than $50,000. Eversource often pays it. So if we don't do this, I'm not optimistic. If we don't do Washington Elm, I'm not optimistic that we will be able to get another location in West Newton or get Eversource to do it, given there's a free spot right there where the work is done.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was an RFP process to arrive at Green Spot as our
Yeah.
vendor for the public spaces. When did that
That's correct.
process occur about?
Probably started about a year ago, and the contract was probably signed 3 to 6 months ago.
Okay. It's interesting because this conversation just made me think about the consistency piece that Councillor Noel was bringing up in some of our
Yeah.
private lots and what's there. Just reminded, or as I was thinking through it, that pretty sure it's EV Go that operates in the Chestnut Hill Mall, right?
Yeah.
And I guess so like somebody who's got a private parking lot, they can still partner with whatever vendor they
Yeah,
wish for
any-
an electric parking space.
Any
at
private
this
lot
point,
is
right?
any private lot's using whatever vendor they want. Absolutely.
Okay. Next question was about the pricing for it, because this also just made me think, putting my PS&T hat on for a second, about our parking ordinance and fees for parking and all that. Do we need ordinance updates around some of this to accommodate what's going to be charged?
I can't answer that. I should be able to, but what we've done with traffic council is we are calling these spots other. They're just classified as other parking spots, and Green Spot is the one that is charging the revenue, and they're keeping the revenue and then providing a share back to us at the end. So we're really not involved in that. It's very different than a parking meter where we own that meter and are collecting that revenue directly.
It's just interesting, and I'm not sure who to ask about it. I guess Mr. Sobel and Kozis and others, but
Yeah.
we've been very intentional over time
Yeah.
with both the fee in terms of the ordinance, but then also for enforcement purposes. It just made me wonder if we actually have the legal backing on the books to, for example, ticket somebody who was parked there but not charging, or
Right.
whatever other situation we can think of. So
Yeah, and
I
we did work with the police a number of years ago on this in terms of how enforcement could work and what it would look like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly not a reason to not accept the money. I certainly
Yeah.
think we should accept the money and move forward. I just want to make sure that, we're setting ourselves up for success and all the other details that have
Exactly.
to support it. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have other comments or questions? I don't see any. I don't think we've had a motion on this item yet. Is there someone, Counselor Norton?
I'm happy to move it.
Okay, motion to approve by Counselor Norton. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
We have one abstention from Counselor Maliki, and then I believe 7 in favor. So we are going to move on to 86-23, acceptance of $190,000 from Mass DOT's Community Transit Grant Program. And this
I'll take
was
this
for-
one.
Yeah, thank you. We had this before PSNT last Wednesday, and PSNT has approved the 6-0. Thank you very much. If you could introduce this one.
Yeah, this is CTTB Community Transit Grant Program is funding that we have received every year for the senior portion of NUMO, and it covers operations. We have to apply each year, but they've been very liberal in supporting us each year. So this year we've received 190,000, and it goes directly to the senior portion of the NUMO expenses. It's
The
a
number of us
rare grant that supports operations, a very rare operations grant.
Counselor Kalis.
So what are the costs of the operations on a yearly basis for the senior, for this program? And if it's less than 190,000, can you keep this and roll it over to the following year?
For the senior portion, it's about 450 to 500,000 a year.
Okay. All right, good, thanks.
So I know in PSNT and in prior finance committee discussions, we talked about a presentation on the overall finances of NUMO. We obviously had a discussion in this committee, I don't know if it was 8 or 9 months ago, about overall the finances of NUMO, but I know that Director Heath was intending to sort of re-up that presentation and discussion. I think we left PSNT unsure of when that might happen. Ms. Lemieux, I see you preparing to speak. So do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that he hopes to be back to you sometime next month.
Okay, I don't know, one of the things we were discussing, I don't know if we have that outstanding NUMO docket item that we can use to put it back before us and discuss it next month, or if we need a new docket item. So can you and I just remember to touch base about that and make sure we have something queued up so we can
Absolutely.
get the discussion before us? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do we have other comments or questions on this? Do we have motion?
Yeah,
I'll
so
move it.
So I heard Counselor Norton first, so I'll motion to approve by Counselor Norton. Counselor Gentile, you have your hand up.
You're muted.
I did, but I'm gonna hold off on my comment. This is something that I can look into with an email to somebody. So I just disregard my hand. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Anything further on this item before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any Any no's, any against? Okay, so I think we have unanimous approval on that. Okay, the next one is 85-23. Acceptance of $712,459 from the Mass DOT Community Connections Program. Also before PSNT last Wednesday and also approved 6-0. Ms. Friedman.
This grant is also for NUMO. It's actually our second round of Community Connections funding. Community Connections funding usually it's new services, but we qualified again because we were adding vehicles. We were transitioning to electric vehicles, and we are planning to add some key destinations just beyond Newton's border that will enhance the service. So Watertown Square will add service to that. I think Watertown along Pleasant Street and the Waltham commuter rail. And a lot of that is when we looked at our census data, the sort of primary location where workers were coming into Newton for jobs is Waltham and Watertown, and wanted to just facilitate that a little bit better. Those are changes that aren't anticipated to add any significant cost to the system, but it also allows us to get this grant.
So my main takeaway from this part of the discussion in PSNT was that this grant specifically is about expansion of services or new services as opposed to funding for ongoing.
Yeah, Community Connections does not do ongoing operations. But we were able to get another 3 years of funding because we're expanding.
Okay, thank you. Do we have Councilor Kayla?
3 years of 3 years of funding of operations or for this?
The funding will end up covering the new vehicles. It can fund the electric vehicles, and it can fund the service hours that are going to Watertown and Waltham.
Okay, I guess from the way you just kind of described it, I feel like we're expanding, but none of it's going to, it's all going to that one area that Waltham, bringing people in, Waltham, Watertown. But are you saying we're also getting new vehicles?
We're growing all the time. So we now have 8 vehicles full-time, 2 vehicles in the afternoon. And that's part of the expansion. We haven't even expanded the service area, but we're already up to those vehicles. So the grant can cover that expansion.
And
that's to keep up with the growing demand.
Okay. And as we're growing, our profitability is, we're breaking even?
We'll never break even because it's always going to need public funding and private funding. You'll never make enough on public transportation in Newton based on fare revenue.
Right. Are we getting to the point though? I mean, my concern is that we're getting to the point where we're growing something where it's not profitable and we can't sustain it. And we're wholly dependent on grants. Should we be focusing on our core area versus expanding? Because it just puts us more at risk, I think.
Yeah, let me explain it better. The expansion into Watertown and Waltham is a minuscule increase in costs. The majority of this grant is going to be covering the expansion in terms of the added vehicles to meet the demand in the current service area. The transition to electric vehicles is a $0 cost to us, but it qualifies us as well for this grant. So doing exactly what we were doing anyway qualifies us for this grant.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Okay, Councilor Norton, then Noel.
Thank you. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that we would continue to have to subsidize this program. And as our population ages, I would imagine it'll be an even more and more valuable program. This is not to at all disparage my mother's driving, pushing 80 this year, but it's great if she's got an alternative. I'm curious, looking at the communities, is that areas that sort of the wider, like the MAPC or someone wants to expand to, or those are areas that our current riders have said that we would like to see expansion to, like maybe they have medical appointments there or employment or whatever.
Yeah, they were very very highly requested in our surveys.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Counselor Noel.
Thanks, Counselor Grossman. So I think when we're thinking about programs like NUMO and other public transportation initiatives, I think from my understanding is we need to move away from this narrative that we're either going to make money or break even and think about it like education or other things that we invest in because it's the outcomes are what the ultimate goal is, which again, if we can create a sustainable public transit system, whether that be NUMO, whether we can fortify the MBTA, we do see the climate mitigation goals. And so I know we're finance, but we probably need to start thinking about public transportation differently as opposed to a zero-sum financial gain, but measure it from different outcomes. Not that it can't be measurable, but maybe not measure it financially.
Thank you. I guess I would just add to that while overall as a philosophy, I definitely agree with you. Obviously, having some expectations and continuity around where the money is coming from and in what forms, what we can count on in terms of grant funding versus what we have to come up with internally. That part of it is at least what I find a little stressful about the program.
I agree.
I don't know, Ms.
100%.
Freeman, if you find it stressful.
No, I agree, but I think we need to continue to seek additional funding or raise revenues or prioritize funding for these types of programs. I don't think we can ever count on them being self-sustaining, but we have to figure out what are our outcomes, what are the goals. And yeah, it's certainly stressful when you have a requirement, you don't have a funding source, that when something's not self-sustaining. But there's lots of things that we do because of the outcomes that aren't self-sustaining.
Definitely take the point. Do we have other comments, questions, discussion on this item? Do we have a motion on this item?
I'm happy to move it.
Okay, motion to approve by Counselor Noel. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have 8-0 on that. Thank you, Ms. Friedman. I think we're all set, right? That's it
Great.
for tonight. Okay.
Have a
thank
great
you.
night, everyone.
You too. So the last item is 59-23, and this docket item was requesting a discussion regarding Newton's Economic Stability and Mobility Initiative. I, and as well as a number of other folks who are here tonight, were co-docketers on this discussion. So the reason that I intend to ask for a motion of no action necessary on this, initially this item was referred to us. And then the president and our clerk and some of the co-docketers determined that the discussion really should be held in the substantive committee overseeing the department responsible for the program, and therefore it was referred to Programs and Services. But I think all involved discussing this referral agreed that having this discussion in Programs and Services once, as opposed to either in Programs and Services once and Finance on a separate occasion, or as a joint meeting of 16 of us, was unnecessary. Therefore, Programs and Services proceeded with their initial discussion of it on the 8th last week, and they held it. But essentially, there was really no mechanism for the item to be referred away from Finance, since it had initially been referred to us at one of our full council meetings, and therefore the cleanest procedural way for us to deal with it was to entertain a motion of no action necessary, if folks concur with that. Did I explain that well? Any questions, comments on that? Councillor Lucas. Oh, and we've been joined by Councillor Lucas.
Can you hear me?
We can.
There we are. Hi, everyone. So I didn't know this was in programs and services, so thank you for alerting me to that, Chair Grossman. Do you know when programs and services is going to take this up again?
I don't. I actually didn't realize they had held it, but that showed up on this agenda that they had. So I don't know when they will be taking it back up again. They did just discuss it. I don't know if anybody here who was present for that discussion can elaborate.
Well, I know Councilor Noel and I are both on that committee as well, so we were both there, and I think a few others were. It was a pretty thorough discussion, so check out the video if you didn't have a chance to see that. But that committee also tends to hold a lot of items, whether or not we're going to take them back up, just in case we want to take them back up later. So I don't know if there is actually an intention of bringing it back or not, because I don't know if there was anything that was sort of unresolved that we wanted to circle back to officially.
All right, thank you. All set.
Okay, thank you both. With that said, is there a motion for no action necessary on this item?
Happy to
Yeah, so
move.
moved.
I'll take Counselor Kalis this time. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of no action necessary, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have a motion for NAN on that. Mr. Scahill, that's it for tonight, right? Did I miss anything?
Correct, that's everything.
Okay, great. I think we're all set. Have a nice evening, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.